leave you this for your consideration. The most important factor in any metaphysical exercise is the release of belief systems, boundaries, and fears. All limitations are self-imposed. All limitations are self-imposed.
Hello, Mercedes.
Hi, Kestrel. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited about this conversation we're going to have today.
Yeah, me too. So we caught up last week just briefly, but we hadn't seen each other for, you said 3 years, which amazes me. So even at the time that I met you, it was very magical. And, you know, one of the things that I hold with me from that time is that you're one of the examples on the planet currently, for me, that's someone who lives in spirit with spirit. So, I mean, I connect with you even if I'm not calling.
Yeah.
So that it's such a joy to actually speak. And so I wanted to just start off with that introduction, and that we did meet in a very interesting way and a very seemingly kind of foretold day, and someday thought that maybe I would be doing this with you and we would be able to talk about your story. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about the one thing that we talked about last week that I wanted to maybe start with is that you had said, and I had said I felt the same, that don't know of many, if any, ways to have a truly transformative experience without losing everything. And so I know your story involves a lot of loss and a lot of beauty, and that's what really, you know, compels me to ask you these questions and begin interviews.
Well, there were so many different layers of loss, and it really, looking back on it, I think it really is interesting how I would define loss then and how I would define loss now. Now I'm understanding that the spiritual paths that were sometimes very dark, and I'm a spiritual intuitive, so what would be very interesting during my dark times is that I could see very clearly for just about everybody else around me, but I couldn't see what the next step was for myself. And I think one of the things we talked about is how is this journey for you, you know, so that other people will be able to understand that maybe, oh, I'm not crazy, or, oh, this is normal or logical, even though it seems very, in my book, The Soul Inspired Tune-Up, I call it the path of the divine in logic, because it just is, in the moment, what you're thinking about and what you were doing is just so incredibly counter almost everything that you've known up until that point in your life. And so
one can wonder, and if anyone thinks that not everyone that's on a path has this, we're here to say is the following.
And then I think the other thing that I would say about loss right now is, and I learned this actually fairly early on, is that the transformative experience or the transitional experience does not have to go through things like near-death experiences, or I had a transformative experience. I was dancing with a man for 2 minutes, and we went to this other place. And it was the first time I understood that I could go to the other place without lying on the floor with 2 guns to my head, which actually happened, at gunpoint, you know. So I think that how we define loss when we're coming out of an extremely materialistic, in my case, corporate environment. I was a vice president for one of the big companies. I think it looks very different in
So I would love to hear that. I would love to hear the difference. If you could take yourself back to that time, because I remember you telling me about that woman that you were, that role that you were playing in the world, and how that shifted. And I think that's fascinating, I think.
Well, I think that, first of all, I was the go-to person if you wanted anything to shift, change, or move. So that hasn't changed except for the way I did it and the heart that I did it with. So if, you know, we could look back and see all the bodies strewn, you know, all the corpses strewn, but the job got done. So whenever, and I got rewarded for that. I went from being just a little above a salesperson to director of a major retail operation on the Las Vegas Strip in less than 5 years. And I turned an unprofitable division into a division that was in the black within 2 years, but the heart in which all of that activity happened meant that there were a lot of personal funerals along the way, business corpses along the way, right? Now it's been very interesting because I'm doing some volunteer work with a spiritual center here, and I've had the opportunity to work at the executive level or work with the executive level within that center, and it's been very interesting to feel the changes within myself because even though there has been real need to shift, change, and move, now it's happening through spirit, and it's happening with the intent of being in concert, in harmony, and balance with everybody's highest good, including, which is some of the work that I do, the highest good for the center itself, because the center is not a building. The center is a living, breathing, eternal, infinite organism itself. And so I went into prayer about what was the purpose of this business. How is this business bringing forth the eternal infinite into the third dimensional plane?
Wow.
Who walks through this door is going to understand, feel, or sort of intuitively know that this is the right place, the right experience for them so that they can come into harmony and balance and then go out and do good in the world for themselves. So it's two totally different mindsets and heart sets. And
in terms of consciousness, can you, like, in your imagining, shift back to the consciousness that being who you are and then having that job where there were bodies strewn, like how that's not an integrity? Like, what ways do we keep ourselves from seeing that while we're in it? Do you remember that?
I would like to go back to the part of your sentence about being in integrity, because at the time I was in integrity with who I was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
See, there is a difference in being in integrity now, and I talk about it because I'm a channel, and I live a human existence, and then I go into a space and I allow the eternal infinite, that's what my guides call themselves, to flow through me. And then I come back out of the channel and I live my life. And my channel is a teaching channel. And what I found, particularly fascinatingly, in the last 120 days, 90 days, 30 days, that people had been viewing me as I was the channel, like I was to be living this sort of pristine, otherworldly life. And then what happened was I did something that was very human. And I got angry about something. And everybody was looking at me like I had betrayed them. But I am the channel. I am a clear and conscious vessel for the eternal infinite. And I live a human existence. So I make mistakes. I have human emotion and all of that. In order to be in integrity at this point, I do my best. I stand in spirit, as spirit, for spirit, through spirit, and to spirit, the spirit within you, the spirit within. So that's how I stand. That's how I stand in integrity now. In the past, I was still in integrity because I was still being who I was. I didn't know any differently.
Right.
So I was still acting from that space of integrity. But the space of integrity was you had, a former athlete had objectives and goals, get to the finish line, and so we got to the finish line. That was in integrity to who I was in that moment. Mm-hmm.
So if you can mark some things that have happened in the years from then till now that were significant in shifting that, what comes to mind for you?
Well, the biggest thing, two things that were sort of back to back were April 22nd, 2005 at 10 a.m. robbery at gunpoint is what I, title now the story. And we can look back and talk about it factually, but emotionally at that time, it was making 4 choices to live during the course of that event. And so what do you do to live? So you listen to the people that have the guns to your head. You breathe in, even though I was not in church every day. I was not necessarily a religious person. I do believe and have always believed in a higher source. But So you began to pray and went to this whole other state of consciousness, and then the whole room shifts. So then I had a very real experience that love can shift an environment immediately. Not like we have to go into our prayer closet and sit and say Om. You can shift into love, which will shift your situation immediately, transformatively. Okay? So when I took those 3 breaths and I went down into this new state of consciousness, and I heard, and I felt this extreme peace, and that peace and love shifted, and the robbers, I talk about this, the robbers actually asked me if my hands were tied too tight, if I could breathe over the blanket or sheet they put over my head, and made me comfortable as they proceeded to rob my house. But that was my first experience in being in that state of consciousness. So I guess in some way that was my near-death experience. I didn't end up in a hospital, thank goodness, but I had that shift. And
yes.
I had that real shift. And then when I was coming out and the event was ending and they were leaving the house, I heard a voice say to me, "This is yours to teach. This is yours to teach." So now I teach igniting the peace within you, because it's from that state of peace and love that we can, quite frankly, stand our ground to take anything that is coming to us on this spiritual path and these spiritual journeys that we take. If we know that we can do it from a place of peace, we're willing to stay there longer. We're willing to kind of hold our ground. And I think the other element is we know that we're not alone, that there is other forces, other energies that are with you always. Some of us call it the ancestors, some say guardian angels, some say the presence of God, the eternal infinite, the presence of love, whatever you call your high spirit. When you've gone through this type of experience, you know. So therefore, you don't have to guess, does God really exist, or does angels really exist, or whatever? You know. Totally different place. Totally different place to be. And then I went through, the second experience is I went through a divorce that was actually worse than a robbery. And people just sort of gape at me when I say this in front of live audiences, like, how is that possible? But I went through some severe emotional cruelty. Because now I've gone through a robbery, I have situational post-traumatic stress disorder, and then I have somebody who's perpetrating severe emotional
Which
stress.
happens.
Which happens.
One will happen after another. So
Right.
I've heard. Yeah, when you're knocked down and not up again. So I don't think that'll be surprising.
Yeah, so that caused me to start seeking things like yoga and therapy, and I was very fortunate to find a therapist who would just sort of let me go. I started writing, and I come in with my next chapter of the book, or the next chapter of whatever I'd written.
Oh, beautiful.
And she would just let me, go, and then when I cried, there were times where she'd say to me, "It's okay to cry," and I was like, I just can't cry. Well, my father had beaten me as a young child, and I wouldn't cry. My mother used to say to me, "Please just cry. He'll stop hitting you if you cry. Please cry." So here I'm going through this whole thing as an adult, and I can't cry. I just can't. But that anger is fueling these books, and they're fueling the anger actually fueled my healing and sort of catapulted me into, damn it, I'm going to find a way out of this, sludge. And that way was yoga. And I happened, as it always happens, the teacher came and took a special interest in me. And then the gifts really began to emerge.
Beautiful. Well, one of the things that I'm like seeing 2 words, anger and integrity. And so something I heard weaving through your story is that it doesn't appear to me that anger is out of spiritual integrity at times in which it's appropriate. So, and maybe that's the thing that people didn't understand about you, because they have a spiritual concept of someone who's spiritual, that they wouldn't get angry. When in fact, some of the times that you were angry alerted you, certainly, and then the fear alerted you to shift, So, and the other thing that I'm fascinated with is that when you shifted in those moments with the robbers, you shifted them as well. because you shifted. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I often think, I mean, even to this day, where they're at, having had that experience. I had this whole imagining in my mind that they would go to rob somebody else because it's sort of a habit at that point. It's a way of living, especially the demographics and who we think robbed me. They never really did catch them. But I often had this imagining that they actually went to go rob somebody else and couldn't. They just couldn't bring themselves to. They had this experience, and this experience of divine love, divine peace. And it's so interesting because when I talk about peace now, one of the, I guess, taglines from a marketing standpoint, I was a former marketing executive, but, igniting the peace within you, that is part of my mandate. And so when I am with people, Ashley, we had an experience on a rock, I believe, when I'm with
you and I.
When I'm with people and I'm teaching people, what generally happens is they experience this sort of place of extreme peace that you can't almost get there by yourself because you don't know where there is. But my theory is once you know where there is, you can get there on your own. And so going back to my original thing where you don't have to have a near-death experience, there are now teachers being brought forth in the world that have come with this gift of teaching people how to get to this place of extreme peace, extreme love, extreme knowing of God, and that is negating the need for these violent, otherworldly experiences that people have traditionally talked about as far as, having to go through trauma in order to get there so that you can get it, so that they can go on to their divine purpose. See, that's part of my purpose.
My concern with that is the thing that happens, the spiritual bypassing, where people want to get to that perceived spiritual place where they have a concept about what it is that doesn't involve looking at darkness or feeling anger or having a difficult experience manifest in your life to teach you something like a level of discernment so that you can be a clear channel. Can it happen that way, that someone could skip that
my
part?
love, believe me, having that experience is not a spiritual bypass, in my point of view, because other things come forward. The soul-inspired tune-up is this whole process of spiritual hygiene because you do end up taking this inward journey. But having understood that place of peace, it allows you to hold your stamina or hold your strength as you're walking along these paths. Because life is a journey, and these things are still going to come up. It's not like you go from knowing this place of peace to utopia. At the point that you have nothing to work through, you have transitioned into energy.
Right.
Living is coming to you. Living is still coming to you, but how you're facing that living allows you to be in a different place. It's almost like you skipped a grade because you're just that talented.
Okay, so then getting back to your book and your system, the soul-inspired tune-up, would you say then that would be something? So everyone's going to have their journey. Yet, if people are, manned with, certain elements of, they know what home feels like. They know how to get there. They have some sense of connecting with soul. Then their experiences may not be so traumatic. So that could be a role. So they're not skipping anything, but it's just helping. It's providing tools rather than doing it in the dark.
So often I went through this time of financial. I'm coming out of it now. I'm just coming out of it now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's like, okay, we made it through the last 2 months. Oh, wow, But I was spiritually protected. I was never homeless. I've always had a home over my head through some miraculous serendipitous tilting of the dominoes. I ended up in different places. I've always eaten. Never have missed a meal. I've not gone hungry. I have, though, come to the understanding remember corporate executive six figures to this.
Right.
So I have the understanding of sometimes we don't always get to eat what we want to eat, but then you get to appreciate what you have.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think that there are pathways and journeys that we go through, but I don't know that they are the same for everybody, but there are gateways. So if I didn't go through, I appreciate and actually love where I am right now. For the first time in my life, I can taste, I appreciate. There's been times when I've been sitting in my house thinking how is this going to work, and literally somebody has knocked on the door with 2 bags of groceries. So and I haven't talked about that part of the journey, but I absolutely had to go through that part of the journey because what happened for me personally, and this will be the place that spiritually that I've gotten to, is just be in the moment. So when we met and when you were, when I was in Santa Fe 3 years ago, I was just discovering that how to be in each moment. And just be satisfied in each moment. Am I human? Yes. Do I come out of it? Yes. But that's what I was talking about earlier about understanding the state of peace and understanding the state of being. And Spirit took me off of reading. So I didn't get this through, let's go read a best-selling author or some prominent spiritualist. I got this through the living of it. I could not read. The words would blur on the page, and I could not read.
Wow.
So everything that I was getting was absolutely through Spirit. So we get it. Sometimes people lose their physical vibrancy. They lose their health. So we would, I'm beginning to go into we, which means Spirit is pushing. So if I go into Spirit, you'll know.
Go.
But if we all have these sort of individual places to be and go and see and experience, but the pathways and the mental, physical, spiritual attitudes and thought processes may be, I'm going crazy. You're not going crazy. It's all spiritual. It is all spiritual.
Amen.
And when you can get to the acceptance of it, this is a spiritual thing happening to me. I am not losing my mind. Can you imagine starting to talk like, out of the blue one day with translation? And then I'm sitting there thinking, this is what people go through. This is normal. Somebody woke up and had their coffee and bagel and then decided to start talking in Spirit. No, I'm thinking I'm losing my mind. So I appreciate this forum this interview we're doing today, because I think that a lot of times especially if we are to be sort of public gifted people, not people that are just living their, I apologize for that gist, not people who are living their lives and affecting people in a more quiet way. But when you see me and I walk in a room, most people know that I walked in a room. And then I start with the language so people really know that I walked in a room. And so it's a more public kind of way. It's a more, out there kind of way. And so when you're going through these paths and these journeys and you're thinking, I don't know that I want to do that. People might think I'm crazy. They may lock me up. And I can't get a job. I used to have people call and say, Mercedes, where are you? And for 2-3 years, I couldn't even get a job. People weren't even looking at my resume. And maybe it's because the word has gotten out that I'm talking this crazy language and got bopped over the head while I got robbed. And I came back, and now I'm laying my hands on. So all of this stuff is happening, and my journey has been easy. I haven't been on the street. I've been provided for. Okay? But again, relatively speaking, going from being able to write a check for anything that you want to understanding that, boy, I am so grateful that I got to eat today. And then holding your ground, holding your spiritual ground, because after a while I just sort of said, well, the job isn't coming. I even had I even had a job coach say to me, you need to go do that spiritual thing that you're doing because I've been in this coaching employment field for 25 years. I've never seen the things that are happening with you. Go finish writing your book and go do what you have to do. And then come back and see me.
Beautiful.
And I'll help you get a job because it was crazy. So I was just going to say that the story will look differently for somebody else. But I also think that even the mental health profession is saying, oh, there's this thing called spiritual crisis, and it's when somebody is moving through their spirituality, it has been sort of exploded within them, and, you know, we don't necessarily have to drug them up. We need to get people who understand these pathways to get people through this.
Let's hope. And so that's so much. You just really summarized so much of why we're here and we're doing this programming, for those very reasons. For the fact that me sitting with you and having you begin to channel and speak in this different language when I was with you, that beautiful experience years later when I'm in a situation where I'm singing and all of a sudden words come out of the mouth, I might have thought I was insane. And what I did was smile, and I'm like, oh, Mercedes. And so the more people that can hear these stories from you, you know, me chiming in, and then that's all that can just say, oh, okay, I don't have to get bogged down in that. And so much, I really do hope you're right, and I'm working toward a new paradigm of psychotherapy. You know, having been one for 25 years, you know, I operated outside of the box for the very reasons you're speaking of. We talked about soul immediately, and it got to be that those would be the only people that would come to me, would be the people that were ready to talk that way, you know, not through my doing. And so just to share these journeys with the two of us has been so beautiful for me, that to be able to open it up to others. And so I'd like to do many more of these calls. There's so many beautiful directions and so much support for others through this kind of conversation. So, and I'm just, you know, you talked about not crying, and I probably almost cried 3 times while you were talking, just of the sheer beauty of what you were saying. I think we have a beautiful start here.
Yeah, everything, including my experience as a marketing executive, everything. If you hear nothing else in my voice, hear this, everything that you are experiencing, from when you started having a tit in your mouth, your mother's tit in your mouth, to where you are now, is all contributing to this journey we will call spirituality. So this understanding and realization that the frequencies and energies are porous, are not solid, or flexible and fluid, that will allow you to move through move through every circumstance in your life, even the times that you were on your knees. It is for a spiritual purpose. And it's for your soul to know the experiences that will bring you closer to source. Now, the one thing we have not talked about today, and it really is probably for a whole nother conversation, but for today we would say, when you come into this understanding that it is all spiritual, it allows you to stand it. You know how you just want to just crawl under a sheet or something? Yeah. It allows you to stand it. It allows you to get through, make through, know. And in some ways that is giving you the strength. But the other piece of this is that, and this may sound a little strange, and the one who is speaking is still working on this part of it as well, but it is also giving you a place to say, I am going to be in joy. I am going to be in happiness. I am going to be in love. I am going to be love. Be happy. Be joy. Be. And just that understanding shifts the point of view that you have, for you to come into acceptance. Like you can breathe in and receive the lesson, and then exhale and accept the lesson. Breathe in and receive the new energy and frequency that is flowing through your body, and then exhale and accept the new energy and frequency that is flowing through your body. Breathe in and accept the intuition, the intuitive knowing that is coming to you, and knowing that it is your truth, and then exhale and accept the intuitive knowing that is coming through you, and knowing and accepting that it is your truth. That is the purpose of these journeys. But when you elevate it to a place where you know it's spiritual, you know it's your destiny, you know it's your soul lesson, you know that you are not walking alone, that you are walking with, through, to, and as the spiritual, infinite, eternal source of your highest, best purpose, then you will know that this point, this path, this instant and eternity, that you are elevating yourself. You are coming into concert and harmony and balance, so that you can do the great purpose of your work and of your life, which is to be in joy. We think that is enough for now. We know that she was thinking, oh, how are these people going to be staying in the background? So she just let us come through for a little bit. But understand that these pathways are to joy. These pathways are to what you may call God. These pathways are to knowing. These pathways are to being. These pathways are to the highest eternal energy, so that you can look at another human being and say, you are God as I am God, and together we move as force. We will bid you adieu. That is enough for now. Thank you.
Oh, nothing can be said after that. Beautiful. Bella, thank you.